Okay. The 2011 America Invents Act is pretty interesting and pretty important. It will switch the U.S. patent system from a first to invent to a first to file system, which in many cases experts believe will be less prone to litigation and legal action. It also provides a new way to challenge patents out of court. Plus, it'll allow startups to get a fast track consideration on their patent applications. Very, very important, especially in internet and time, e-commerce for time to market in this competitive world, rather than the 30 plus months they typically must wait. So these are important changes. Uh, Trademarks. Trademarks are real interesting because they identify or distinguish goods and indicate their source. So you might trademark a logo, you might trademark a product name, you might trademark the name of a process. At Interworld e-commerce, we trademarked process-centric computing, which was our method of uh, providing process flows for e-commerce site administrators to set up their stages of work. So how the workflow handled as consumers went and loaded their basket, began to fill out their form, invoke the payment process, and then invoke shipping options. All of these types of things could be changed and modified through a visual model. Also, our e-commerce merchandisers could come in and they could shift the order that cross-sells and upsells and other merchandising campaigns were used in another process model. So the term here, process-centric computing, was TM trademarked by Interworld Corporation. Why? Because it ensures that consumers get what they're paying for. It also, in our case, it ensures that our e-commerce merchants were getting specific Interworld e-commerce process-centric computing in our business processes. It protects the owner, which was Interworld e-commerce, against piracy and misappropriation of the use of process-centric computing. Infringements happen within trademarks too, either through confusion in the marketplace, not understanding that there is a trademark, or through just bad faith and ignorance. So behavior of that weakens the connection between trademark and product is really the dilution effect, where effectively people, organizations are disregarding trademarks and moving ahead with copying or misappropriation. And this type of dilution really weakens the connection. So higher enforced trademarks through litigation, unfortunately, is one of the answers. Internet and trademark law examples. You're probably familiar with, there's a number of cases over here on the right on this graphic, but the whole idea of cyber squatting, registering domains or misspelling like Amazon without the second A, if you will, and people are mistyping Amazon.com, they end up at a site that may look like Amazon, but it's not Amazon. It's a way for shady characters to come in and misappropriate and potentially generate or extort profits by coming through that site, even through ad revenue. And obviously that's harmful to Amazon. Cyber piracy is registering domain names similar, identical to trademarks of others to divert their product to different sites. Again, and in the confusion, the original inventor is harmed. A really slippery level is meta tagging or infringement, where trademark words are used within another site's meta tags or their SEO tags. So, you could be talking about trademark terms on a site that's irrelevant, which will inherently drive search engines to bring up the irrelevant site and get traffic that is misappropriated. So a variety of different ways, keywording, linking, and framing are other ways too. So we've talked about this. So in terms of how do we control this, who controls the internet, what elements should be controlled and how, in the governing bodies, and how have they been involved? How will they be involved? So many years ago, when DARPA uh, invented the internet through the science um, uh, environments of the world of the scientists, through the NSF and defense research programs in the 1970s through 1994, before the World Wide Web, it was really a fully government funded program. So there was, accepted in government control. But as in 1995, as the World Wide Web became involved, uh, uh, browsers became involved, network solutions came out and began the business of assigning and tracking high-level internet domain names. So we began to the world of privatization. So governments moved in 1995 to 98 to the privatization. Policy issues are not being handled here, but there is at least some level of tracking and assignment. So there's some rigor around domain names and how backbone bandwidth is used and shared across private telco companies. Essentially, since 1995, the internet has been self-regulated. President Clinton and the Department of Commerce encouraged the creation of a semi-private body called ICANN, and we've talked about this in other lessons, to deal with conflict, establish policies. I mentioned over and over the ICANN spam laws that are in place, which again requires businesses to present emails in particular in a way that they have permission to send it to your inbox through an opt-in mechanism. So that's part of the self-regulation. In 1998 through today, legislative, judicial bodies worldwide began to implement direct controls over internet and e-commerce, and it's moving along in the United States and in Europe and in other areas, but in many, many areas there are no governing bodies or laws. So today, again, a mix of self-regulation and standard bodies. So taxation is another area of, how is the internet commerce to be governed, and how are local jurisdiction issues to be handled. I mean, currently, we're just beginning to see, in the World Wide Web and the world of e-commerce since 1995, we're just beginning to see more push towards sales tax. For many, many years, there was really no sales tax at all across the United States in internet transactions. Past few years, certain states have passed laws, so businesses with physical brick and mortar stores within a state or municipality, any internet commerce done in that state is subject to tax. So as part of your e-commerce site as a merchant, you need to be collecting tax in those areas, and that's been around for a number of years. If in fact you run a distribution center in a state where you do not have a brick and mortar store, so for instance, Amazon has distribution centers across the United States and across the world. In those locations, municipalities and states where they have distribution centers, any transactions going through those locales and through those states are subject to sales tax. Other tax subsidies are involved with, such as the moto retailing tax subsidies. But there's still a push, grassroots push from the Internet Tax Freedom Act to delay and even eliminate the world of taxation on internet. Taxes, each municipality within a state, each local area has their own tax regulations. States have different tax regulations. There's federal tax regulations. And this is all across the United States. So it's very unlikely that there'll be a comprehensive, integrated, rational approach for any time to come. But we will have these specific issues within specific locales, regions, and national. Net neutrality is another area that's really has to do with, the net is and the internet is neutral to everybody. We all use the same bandwidth, but there is the ability to differentiate as a backbone, broadband, internet service provider, private telco, as they do in the cellular phone industry, to provide differentiated pricing strategies based on speed, based on usage and congestion, or a blanket highway toll pricing. Comcast will slow down certain traffic for certain users, but these are being looked at very closely by the Federal Communications Commission, the FCC, and in 2010 put out a compromise net neutrality rules. Obviously, if there's something going on, I know when we at Interworld ECommerce were working with retailers that had big business needs and traffic, internet traffic, e-commerce traffic needs during the Christmas holidays, which is the biggest time for retail merchants, thus retail e-commerce merchants, we would work with e-commerce merchants to funnel traffic through the web servers on the front end to load balance. So certain sets of traffic would be pushed to certain application servers if they were viewing product pages, and certain sets of traffic would be pushed through faster on faster servers or to more servers if they were actually doing a purchase or an order to buy, order management. And why would we do that? We would work with them to do that because it was during the holiday time their biggest, they get 50% or more of their business during the Christmas rush for that 4 or 6 weeks, to make sure that those transactions went through smoothly, quickly, efficiently, and at high speeds. And if there was going to be a slowdown in the overall architecture and the speed within the e-commerce site, it would take the hit or the slowdown on lag time for product displays and product pages. So there was a balancing there and there was a compromise there. So this similar compromise can be looked at if there's a need due to a spike in traffic or unusualness. An ISP, an internet service provider or broadband provider, can technically slow down traffic if it's potentially damaging their overall network for the good of all. So that's part of the balancing act and compromise there. The area of public safety, another ethical area. So protection of children, the welfare, safety and welfare, big protection against pornography and vile, what was the determining which is which, but legislation that will survive the court system has been proven to be difficult due to what I was just commenting on, really due to the First Amendment rights, but there are child welfare acts and there are organizations in the government as well as commercial e-commerce and internet companies that are looking at this very closely to protect the rights of children. And but there's also efforts to control and protect society through other vices beyond the sexual, but to gambling, sales of drugs, cigarettes, typically handled at the state level, but there is a a wider Unlawful Internet Gambling Enforcement Act. So that's pretty stringent, as it is throughout most of the country through the